With October 20th only a few days away, we are now at our penultimate episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025. And for that, we turn our attention to Cypress County, Alberta, where we are honored to sit down and speak with Council Candidate Robin Kurpjuweit. Robin, thank you so much for sitting down with me for the penultimate episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025. I'm so honored to have you on the show again to talk about yourself, but also talk about your re-election bid as we enter into the final week of the campaign.
Last week.
Got to start with a very simple question. What made you decide to put your name back on the ballot for another 4 years?
You know what? The first 4 years you learn a lot. The next 4 years you feel like you start getting some traction, and then the last. Well, I say the last, but the third term now is kind of it's time for the rubber to hit the pavement and get some things accomplished and done. You know how it is. It takes a lot of effort and some pretty good run up at times to get some of these projects underway, and we want to get it across the finish line.
One of the precursors of a good counselor is to look back on the last term and last few years as you've been in office. What do you look at over the last term in office that you point to and you say, this is why I'm here? These are the items that we have pushed forward for my district and my community with me at the table.
That's a tough question, Chris. That's a good question. So let's focus on the items that we've helped push forward. All right, as a starting point. In my area, water is a big thing. We've taken a couple of projects that have come up, and been put on the table and assessed them, looked at them. We've done some viability studies and seen what's been possible. We've got one right now in Ward 4 that could potentially expand some irrigation area, provide some raw water networks and co-ops, help to expand some resident or some recreational areas and facilities. That one right there, we're certainly not across the line. There's a lot of pushing to do yet. It always is amazing to me, and it's been kind of the reoccurring theme with this. In rural municipalities, we have a lot of the ward systems that are out there, and the wards can be good and they can be bad, and they're constantly challenges with regards to. It can be challenging to do a large project that only affects one ward, and because other councillors are looking at their areas and asking, "What am I getting?" And there's only so much resource to go around. So I'm proud of the fact that we've got it to the table. I think that there's a lot more work and lobbying to be done. There's some value arguments and propositions to be made to the province, and I think that at the end of the day, it's probably going to involve expanding the visions in order to be able to grow out and expand to affect more of those outlying wards as well. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about what's good for me and my area. It's about what's good for the county. So that's been kind of the primaries as far as I'm concerned in my ward as it sits. And things that we've accomplished. I think that we've done some really good work when it comes down to our fiscal restructuring and the way that we've set our targets and laid out plans to meet the reserve requirements that we recognize that we need to have. I think that it's very apparent for anybody that looks at the books at Cypress County that we're in one of the best financial positions that we've ever been in, and that is something that I'm proud to be have been a part of. And so getting to a place where you're meeting those requirements and you're funding those reserves is a positive thing. But then the next question comes is once we have the groundwork and the foundations laid and set, how do we move forward, and what does the strategy look like for funding future investment, for identifying our priorities when it comes down to our existing assets, where we start really having to decide where that money goes, because we're still a small municipality, and at the end of the day, it's amazing how what you built one day for $1 million 15-20 years ago is going to cost 15-20 million to replace. There's some big decision making that needs to happen, and we're nearing the end of life on some of those projects.
Now, looking back on the last 4 years, you talk about some challenges and talk about some of the accomplishments. But when you're sworn in as a councillor, and I've talked to you about this on the cross-border interviews before, but I want to play in the sandbox for a little bit because you mentioned it. When you're sworn in, you're not sworn in as Division 4, Division 3, Division 2. You're sworn in as a Cypress County councillor. And that means you have to look at things through that big picture lens, that macro lens, as I call it. The everything has to go through the Cypress County lens. Is it hard to balance that? Because you are right, you only have a limited supply of money. And while there might be some reforms that you have done around the finances, you still only have a limited supply of money that you can fix things. So
Mhm.
when you do make those choices, how do you ensure that you're always putting the people who voted for you ahead, but also still putting that lens of, is it good for Cypress County ahead of it?
I think that's a really good question. And in one sense, just because it's not your ward, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't uh, have the same kind of investment as though it were your ward. And so I think it's important for ward-based municipalities. Once you're elected, you have to look at it as every ward is your ward, and not just that it falls underneath of the umbrella of Cypress County. But I think the moment that we start thinking, well, it's not my ward, so I'll look at it, I'll support it, I'll whatever. Sometimes maybe we cut some corners. We still need to look at it as this decision is for the county, it's for the betterment of the region as a whole. But our interest in projects that happen outside of, say, my ward of Ward 4, if it's something in Ward 2, Ward 1, I need to look at that as though it was in my ward. We need to assess it like it was. We can't have levels of apathy simply because it isn't my riding, it's not my area, but I'm going to support it because it's the county. We still need to have that investment. I think that applies, that goes far beyond just our own elected area.
Now, this is a question I ask all the people who are on this show, so this is not directed at you. This is the question I've asked everyone. Now, you don't get to choose the people that get to sit around that table with you after October 21st. And that means there may be people you disagree with who may just oppose what you do. They may just be politically misaligned with you.
Mhm.
Are you a good team player? Can you work well with others to take away the sort of personality of politics and think about what is good for the county as a whole? Because that is a question I think a lot of municipal leaders need to start asking themselves as we enter this last week of the campaign, because it is a divided time. Can you work as a team?
Well, you asked me the question, can I work well with others? And the answer to that is yes. I think that in the last 4 or 5 years, there's actually been plenty of division within my own council. And the reality is, I believe that I've brought a professional presence forward every time. You try not to let personal stuff, come in between of where you're going. The reality is I'm a very principled person. I believe strongly in what I do. I strongly believe in the fact that we are there as a representative of the people, and that we are not, we don't receive a report card every 4 years. You and I have talked about this before. I think that, it's been very evident, even in Alberta politics in the last few years, that decisions can be made by levels of government that are not received well by the people. And when the people don't receive the decisions well, we need to be humble enough to pump the brakes, circle back, reassess. Maybe we need to have another town hall or another public hearing, or we need to engage in more debate. We have to be humble enough to recognize that just because we think it's the best decision, if it's not accepted as the best decision by the public, we may need to do a better job of explaining that or listening more in order to actually achieve that level of consent from the public that we're out there hoping to get.
So it brings up the next line of questioning, because I can imagine people are tuning in to listen to the issues and not just about yourself. If you
Yeah.
want to listen to that, they can go back to the episode of when you and I sat down in your community about what your life as a counselor is like. But I want to talk about the issues, because
Sure.
you're right. Every time I speak to a municipal councilor, they often tell me we have two ears and one mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we talk.
Yeah.
Now, as you are in the final stretch of this campaign, I can imagine you're out talking to your residents, talking to the voters. What are the three macro issues that they're telling you that they want to see addressed? Because I can imagine you're going to hear 100 different issues from 100 different people, but symbolize them for me. Give me the three big things that you're hearing at the doorstep.
All right. So listening, making sure that we're prepared to hear what the public are looking for, and that's been the common theme going back 3-4 years now. Low taxes is a big part of it. They want to make sure that they're their taxes. And that, I think, generally in conservative areas, you want small government, low taxes, and we hear that a lot of times. It becomes more of a cliche. And then at the same time, where are we going once our oil and gas is done? What is our plan? And we've looked long and hard at our assessment, where our opportunities are. We have some area that we've purchased as a municipality right now that we can expand out some of our residential and some of our ag industrial and commercial. But we want to be careful because we're not well established for some of the dense commercial, and living right up against an urban center like Medicine Hat and Redcliffe. We also don't want to get into competing with those municipalities. Our economic development is not going to be a success based on the failure of our closest neighbors. And so that's part of it. But I think people want to know that we're willing to listen. I think there's a very serious level of distrust right now with federal, municipal, and provincial government. They want to know that the government closest to the people, being municipal, is actually the government of the people. And that if something is going on, that we will listen. And I'd like to think that I've done a good job on being consistent on that. I'm always open to be called out on it. The reality is that we do the best job that we can moving forward, and I'm going to keep on pushing the direction that I'm going until I'm challenged by one of my neighbors, one of my ratepayers, one of my voters. But those are the three things, Chris. It's water is always a big part of it, but are we listening? Are we hearing from the people? And that is a bit of a double-edged sword too, because there is a certain level of onus that goes on the municipal official as well as on the electorate as well. Because I've got 500 people in my area, I maybe get 20, 30 phone calls from individuals per year. I'm in a pretty quiet ward that way, and so my phone number's out there. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and but we don't lead by doing polling by calling each and every one of the residents every single month. It'd be nice to be able to see them out there and engage with them more often. But the reality is, as things get going, we run into each other in Edmonton and Ottawa all the time. We are actively working for the region, and we're not always in our backyard. So there's a fine balance that goes there.
So I want to play in that sandbox for a second, because
yeah.
I find that, and I'm not being disrespectful to the voters, because I think there's more important things that they're worried about in today's world right now. More and more people are more reactive to municipal politics than being proactive. They will react to the issues that are at hand or the issues that were just passed at council rather than being proactive. And that's their due diligence. That if that is the way they want to act, that is the right, they have to do that. So how do we get more engagement to bring that communication in line? Because you're right, municipal councillors are not just in their communities 24/7, even though they traditionally are. They're the most of the time they are in their communities, but they're in Edmonton, they're in Ottawa, they're in Medicine Hat doing their jobs their full-time jobs as well.
Yeah.
So how do you see yourself in the next 4 years trying to engage people more often to get that line of communication open? Because you're right, it's a double-edged sword, but the sword needs to be swung one way before it can swing the other way.
Mm-hmm. I think trying to be available and being, you show up to the events, you engage with people, you ask them the questions. Like, Chris, if I talk to 10 people right now, I say, hey, I honestly want to know, how have I done? Have I done a good job? I hope that I've served you well. But what can we be doing better? I'm getting a lot of, we're really happy with the way that things are going. I do have, Cypress County is in good shape, Chris. It really is. We have a pretty simple service delivery. We don't have a pile of things. A lot of the recreation facilities, are provided in the city area. We've got, a couple of skating rinks and curling rinks and community halls that we're working on looking after. But if roads are being graded and roads are being plowed and everything is overall happy, people can fall into a state of apathy purely because they're content. I think one of the reasons why it's so reactionary lately is that because unless you're in a very dynamic environment where lots is going wrong, your guard is down until something happens that impacts you. We had the Irvin Library was one of the issues kind of in recent years, where it was something that impacted people. It was an area that I kind of took a position on communication, and that because I believe that the principle of having open dialogue is important for everybody at the table. Whether you agree with it or you disagree with it, you sit down and you talk. You get the information out on the table. And but it's the same kind of an idea if all of a sudden you have a windmill project that shows up on your back door. Somebody that was completely quiet and complacent for the last 5 years, who currently now has a 450-foot blade swinging 800 meters above their house, they'll show up because it impacts them where they're at, and they show up with passion. And we need to be prepared to receive those concerns. And it's not just because they weren't there for the last 6 years didn't mean that they didn't care. It's that there wasn't stuff that was specifically and directly impacting them. And so I'm okay with the reactionary side, as long as when they react, they understand that we're reacting with them in real time. And that's why it can't come down to well, we had a public hearing 6 years ago and you weren't there to present anything. No, that doesn't fly anymore. Now it's in your backyard. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to talk about what you can do about it. Are there options? Are there AUC public consultations that are still coming up? Are there appeals? Are there ways that we can support you as your municipal government if it's not inside of our purview to be able to deal with it directly? And if it is something that we can deal with directly, can we get the council on board with taking a bit of a moment, pumping those brakes, and then circling the wagon back to make sure that at the end of the day, public service is our number one priority?
The second topic that you mentioned was affordability and people's cost of living. Now, this is a topic that is much on many people's mouths right now as we head into the last week of the campaign. And I ask this question respectfully, but as a question, if someone brings it up, I have to ask, do you believe Cypress County spends their tax dollars wisely?
Yes, I do. I think that when it comes down to, like, Chris, there is always going to be ways that we can find, and we're not going to find efficiency by sitting as a group of 9 dissecting every RFP that comes in to discover whether or not a water pump station can be done for $15,000 cheaper. That's not where we're going to get it from. I'm super proud. In the last 8 years, there's one major item that I was very involved with bringing forward, and it was the methodology behind our 20th percentile when it comes down to setting our mill rates and our tax rates. When I first got elected, I remember people coming up to me and saying, it's not fair, residential, keeps on getting pumped up and up and up. Our farmland, our ag land, our non-res, our linear tax, it's way down. Like, it's just, there's not that fair and equitable was not really being considered in the equation. And so we looked at it, and I guess the sell that I brought forward to council at the time was, we want to be a municipality of value, but also one of efficiency and of competitiveness. And so at the time, it was ironic that the residential mill rate was at the 20th percentile in the province. So out of 100 municipalities, we were the 20th cheapest for our municipal mill rate in all of Alberta. As a business guy, I know that if you're in a race to the bottom trying to provide the cheapest product, the cheapest end product, you're just, there's a timeline on your existence. You are going to be able to provide a cheap service for a few years, and then you're going to be gone. And so we wanted to be able to balance value and efficiency, and that value is, what do we get for our taxes, and how much are you paying, and how does that compare with everybody else? And so, and we, at the same time, we were trying, at this point, we were realizing that we had almost $200 million worth of unfunded liabilities as we were doing our assessment on the bridges and culverts that we had to replace. And, you've seen, there's been a lot of conversation about the downloading from the province to municipalities. And this was something that was a very real issue. How do we fund $200 million worth of liabilities that weren't previously allocated for, while providing an environment of competitiveness and affordable? And so we felt, well, the 20th percentile might be a target that works. We had a look at what that would do if we slowly raised the mill rates on the other land uses. And over the next 5 years, we did exactly that. We passed the policy to go to the 20th percentile across the board. As a result, we are putting about $8 million a year into reserves. We achieved that a year earlier than we anticipated. We still need to, even though we're targeting and we believe that we've achieved that value balance, we still don't want to feel like we're entitled to just make decisions without recognizing that people are still struggling. I think that, even last year, a lot of people felt the hit of the education requisition that went up by 12%, and helping individuals understand that the municipalities are a conduit of collecting that, but it's not a municipal tax as much as it is a provincial, and that, we simply take that in, send it up to Edmonton, but municipally, it still needs to stay fresh at the front of our mind.
So there's like three questions I want to follow up with, but I want to follow up with that one first, because this budget cycle, which you're about to enter into after this election cycle, is also going to have another big education requisite hit that the municipality is going to have to feel. Is this budget going to be hard for you, Cypress County, with everything going on in the world, with oil prices the way they are, with the agriculture industry? I don't want to say bottleneck, but it's hurting right now, and I say that respectfully, with people's properties and the economic forecast not looking so rosy.
Mhm.
Is this budget going to be hard right now?
Well, I'd love to be a prophet, and I don't need to be. We actually passed our budget 3 weeks ago, and so I know it's unconventional, but at the beginning of September we brought it forward. The idea was to have a look at where we were wanting to go. When the actual vote came, I was kind of hoping that we could hold off on passing it until after the election and make sure that those who are coming in have the ability to have some input on it. That didn't pass, but what did pass was the budget itself. The nice thing is depending on what the election results are, we can still open it up, and there are times to look at it. But that being said, we did pass a budget with an $8 million transfer of reserves at the end of it. So the budget is strong. It will continue to be strong. As we get into the spring, we're going to start seeing where, different assessments will be coming in, and we'll find out what some of those other asks and requisitions from the province will be. And we'll have to deal with that when we get there. As you know, it's a living document. We're essentially approving staff to be able to start gearing up for RFPs for January, so they can start putting those out in December, but nothing will actually take place until the new year.
Oh, well, I did not know that, so I apologize for being a little bit lacking on the
It's all good.
information.
I like to surprise you, so this is good.
It's shocking when I get surprised.
I know.
So I want to turn to the last area, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It's about water. Now,
Yeah.
this has been an incredibly dry last few summers. All expectations, it's probably going to be another dry summer next year. And water is the name of the game when it comes to crops, when it comes to cattle, when it comes to a lot of the services, and comes to flushing your toilet.
Yeah.
What does the next 4 years look like when it comes to water in Cypress County? I'm going to ask the very stupid question. How do we get more water, or how do we fix this to make sure that we have an adequate supply of water for everyone? Because the province can only do so much, the municipality can only do so much. It has to be up to the weather gods, and right now the weather gods are not looking brightly on us.
Yeah, so we tried something different this year. We actually we declared a state of ag emergency in, I believe it was April, May. And about a week after we declared the state of emergency for drought, we had one of the wettest Julys that we've ever had. So I don't know if we triggered something with that or not. Maybe we'll have to try that again next year. But as you said, it's not like the municipality is not responsible for irrigation. We have irrigation districts that are out there that do that. Although I think that it's fair to say that it's a cop-out when municipalities simply defer to other organizations in order to solve the problem. Our role is to be leaders and to represent our people. We recognize that it's dry. We recognize that there's need for more water, and that potable water when I first got elected, Chris, 8 years ago, potable water was the name of the game. Everybody wanted it. We were looking at water co-ops that were trying to get established. They were hard to fund because the province stopped funding them through Water for Life the same way. And then we looked at, well, what's the next chance or the next option that we have? And that was where that raw water distribution project that is in my ward kind of came up. And it's one that, it's a $40 million price tag that's attached to running water from the end of an irrigation district or canal over to a recreation pond that we have that could potentially serve as a storage facility, and then to build expansion off of that. Sounds like a big project. I think that the reality is that it needs to be significantly bigger. It needs to be bigger because it only impacts 15, 20,000 acres right now. And in a county the size of ours, we need to be looking at water distribution and raw water projects as something that we need a certain radius from the city as a target in order to be that food producing corridor that is attracting a lot of these ag producers and these ag added value ag industries. We can't be sitting there going, well, where are we going to get our water from? And keep in mind too, raw water is 10 cents on the dollar to what potable is. You have a raw water line that runs for 100 miles, you can tap into it all over the place. You have a potable water line that runs into it, you're really restricted because it's a closed system, it's a closed loop. I'm not a water engineer, but it's been explained to me very clearly that just because you have a raw water line that runs in front of your house doesn't mean it's accessible. And I think that's very difficult for people to digest when they're looking to water their grass, they're looking to water their trees, their cattle. There's more and more of these residential water treatment facilities now that, you can have a raw water system that is in place for the county. And if people want potable, they might be able to set up their own co-op that treats the water. Instead of having a potable water line and a potable water co-op, we can have the actual infrastructure as raw water, and they could treat it for the last mile. Things like that, I think, is where a lot of the solutions are going to come from. We need, and I say we, collectively as Cypress County, we need a council that is going to look at some of these projects and think big enough. And then the next step is, and you and I have worked together now for quite a few years, and I have no reservations at all about going to Edmonton, going to Ottawa, banging on doors, meeting with ministers, meeting with the Prime Minister's office, meeting with leaders of oppositions, and making an argument for the needs of rural Canada, and specifically what we have in our backyard in Cypress County is going to require, in a lot of cases, federal and provincial funding in addition to municipal.
But I'm going to burst your bubble here, Robin. That's not going to happen tomorrow. You're going to bang on that door and they're going to say, let's sit down and have that conversation. And then they'll tap you on the head and ask you to leave and say, okay, what's next? They're not going to come to the table. And I'm not trying to be rude about that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just right now, the provincial government and the federal government will tell me the exact same thing that you just told me. Municipalities are looking at reserves, or the federal government, provincial government are looking at reserves, and we need to cut costs. And that means some infrastructure challenges are going to be cut, and that means water lines are going to be cut. So what does the municipality have to do to ensure that we get the water to where it needs to be, but not do it on the backs of the people that are here? Because
I think I agree with what you're saying, but I think that we need to differentiate the difference between infrastructure projects and because there's a difference between a residential infrastructure project that brings water to each home and irrigation projects.
Okay.
If you're talking about expanding,
I macroized them, but I understand.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just,
for those listening who are not known for the Chris and Robin show where we bounce back off of each other, I agree. Yes.
Yeah. I think that and that's where the old way of looking at it isn't something that is going to be achievable. And so you kind of have to reframe your ask. And so that's why, we've got the twinning of Highway 3 coming down to Medicine Hat. The ag corridor is kind of the primary, that's the language that's being used and pushed right now. And so in order to be a contributing partner that's sustainable in an ag corridor that is being promoted by the Premier and our MLA, we need expansion of ag ability and growth. When you have the infrastructure to do more irrigation and to get the water en masse out there for the agricultural and industrial purposes, it becomes a heck of a lot easier to finance the last mile, or working with the smaller communities from a municipal side. But you're probably not going to be funding that initial massive project that is about expanding and transforming an industry purely through the municipality. So I agree with you that the infrastructure and the way that they're going to look at it on the residential is going to be, that's not what's going to be happening. That's what was told to us 6-7 years ago. And so we've been pivoting our approach. And I know Acadia Valley has got an irrigation project that they're working on that, if I'm not mistaken, they were pretty much told, come back to us with something bigger, because it was, you've got to be thinking about, changing a region, not just changing a corner.
But you have to fight for said corner as well
Yeah.
while looking at the region as well, right?
You do, if you have, but the downside about fighting for a said corner, and I'm talking about maybe like a corner with an even award, is that you need to have the votes. And so I can fight all that I want as 1 out of 9, but if I can't even get 4, it is very difficult for me to elevate that to the MLA's office, let alone the province, because I can get the province on board, but the council's going to go, yeah, no, we're not there. It needs to be big enough that the county looks at it and goes, this is a part of our transformational strategy. This is what's going to take us for the next 30 years as oil and gas backs out. This is who we need to become. And if we have that joint vision, and then the council goes to Edmonton and the council goes to Ottawa, and that's a consistent voice. I remember, and I believe you were there, we had some FCM meetings in Ottawa when Mayor Kenny Bell from Iqaluit was up there, and just watching the way that he advocated for his community at the time, and it was just relentless. But there was necessity behind it. It was important. It was a part of their future, them moving forward, and advocating for numbers that would make a lot of rural municipalities shudder. But the reality is that you need to have that collective voice that's all working together, fighting hard, and being consistent with it.
I did forget one item that you did mention, and I want to just play on it for a quick second before we start turning to the sort of future. But that is economic diversification around the oil and gas sector right now. Now, this is not a conversation that's just happening in Cypress County. It should be happening across the province right now. Mm-hmm. What does the next council have to do to make Cypress County an attractive place for businesses to come set up? Because you're right, you don't want to just be known as the cheapest place to do work, because that will come with its issues, challenges. You want to be known as a great place to invest. So what does the next council have to do to ensure that Cypress County becomes that place that people go, you know what, if I'm going to set up shop, I'm not going to do it picking on some reeves here, I apologize right now, I'm not going to set up in Foothills County, I'm not going to set up in Lethbridge County, I'm not going to set up in Sturgeon County, I'm going to set up in Cypress County. What does the Cypress County need to do in the next term to do that?
I'm going to give you my opinion on this, because
you're running for council, so therefore it's your opinion.
I'm running for council. So I think that it's important for counties to be very specific on what kind of business they're looking to bring in, where they want to bring them into, and make sure that the infrastructure that those said businesses are going to need, that infrastructure is there. I believe that if we have somebody that comes to us, they're looking for a certain level of turnkey developmental land. And that if we're constantly saying, yeah, we have all the land, we've got tons of land, but if you want water and you're going to have to bring water 20 miles, it's going to cost you 25 million. If you got to, bring electrical all this way, I think that we're chickening out a little bit. And maybe chickening out is a good term, because it's chicken and egg. We need to make sure that we have the area identified, and then we go and get it. And you jokingly mentioned about Sturgeon County, and it's one of the things I admire about their council is I've seen numerous times where they have identified a certain industry, and then they take their council and they go down into the US, or they go in parts of Canada, and they find the industry, and they may not grab them by the scruff and drag them back physically, but they pretty much go to that length. And I've always admired that direct approach that this past council of theirs took, I think that we need to do very much the same thing. We know egg and egg producing is a huge part of where we want to be going, but it's not just going to be creating more irrigation land, because the regulated nature of agricultural land, it doesn't pay the bills. We need to have the McCains. We need to have a lot of these bigger food producers that are coming in, that we're taking the food that is and the crops that are grown here, processing them, developing a product out of that, and shipping it out. We live on Highway 1, Highway 3, Highway 41. We have a rail line that comes right through. We're 45 minutes from the U.S. border. We have phenomenal access to market down in Medicine Hat and in the Cypress County area. We certainly need government stability down here. We've got an election coming up in a week, and that is one thing that I'm hearing a lot, is that we need to have an area where people are coming into the region and feeling safe. Now you're smiling and laughing, and you're going, "He said it." But the reality,
you poke the bear. I'm not playing in the sandbox, but if you want to poke the bear, you continue to go on. There,
you know
Robin.
what? Listen, it's okay. I love the people that have been on the councils regionally here dearly. A lot of them are friends, but the reality is that even those that are involved in the different councils recognize that it's been a tough 4 years. We need to learn collectively, not just Cypress County or Red Cliff or Medicine Hat. We need to learn from some of the lessons of the past 4 years. And all three municipalities need to put our best foot forward going forward, because the reality is that if Cypress County is looking for a multi-billion-dollar investment, the state of the region is going to come into play. We absolutely need to look at attracting business and bringing people in and providing a stable environment as one of our top priorities moving forward.
And I'll just play in the sandbox so that way I don't feel like I'm going to get emails saying, why didn't you back them up? But you're right. Businesses don't look just at Cypress County. They look at, oh, what's going on in Medicine Hat?
Yeah.
Oh, should we set up a business in and around Medicine Hat? Oh, maybe not, because of what's going on. So let's see what Sturgeon County's doing. Let's see what Lethbridge County's doing. So they look at the dynamics of not just your individual municipality. They look at it for a region, and sometimes a region can be tainted by some bad actors, and that's just my personal opinion. Again, if you're going to send me emails, please do. Happy to get them and file them in the appropriate location.
Well, and you know what, Chris? Like we talked about earlier, we live and we learn, and that applies to everybody. We're human beings that run for a position, and the reality is, like we talked about earlier, we get elected as individuals. We don't get elected as councils. I did a podcast with I think it was called "Bring Back the Front Porch" last week, and we talked a little bit about the ward system and the challenges with it. And I actually advocated on that show that I think it's time that we turn the Reeve position or the mayor position as elected at large. Why do we expect that a county that elects purely off of ward receives any sort of mandate from the electorate? All that we've really done is elect somebody to advocate for something that we talked about, but there's no continuity. There's no conscious, group thought. We had our first public forum in Cypress County ever last week at the high school. It was great. It never has happened. We've never had debates or anything like that. So we're going in the right direction with some of this stuff, but at least by having the Reeve or mayor position, whatever that would be, end up being, as an elected at large, you can have people that run on the idea of, if elected, this is what we want to push for. And I will work my butt off to bring the other 8 councillors from the other 8 wards on into alignment with this, because the mandate is given by the people with regards to the region as a whole. And then we have something that we can work off of. And I think that we need to rethink a little bit about how we take our elections and what that actually is giving us the green light for as elected officials.
And for those who don't know, there are some rural municipalities that do elect their quote unquote Reeve or quote unquote mayor, because some call it differently, at large. County of St. Paul, Red Deer County, and I know Sturgeon County are all three that elect their elect mayors, one elect the Reeve at large. So it is possible, and I kind of agree with you on that one. So I want to turn to the final segment and about what happens after October 20th when the votes are done. You are re-elected, so therefore you are councillor re-elect for Sturgeon County, Cypress County for division.
You just
What
think I
is
look a lot like Neil Como. It's
I,
easy.
you grew the beard and you've thrown me off here.
I know, I know. Hey,
So what will be priority number one for third term Kurpjuweit councillor?
team building, team building, team building. All right.
Say it again. I just didn't hear you the first time.
Team building. So no, it's the moment that the election is done, we get ready for orientation for the new councillors. All right. I I believe I've learned a lot, and my convictions have strengthened a little bit on this front over the last few years. I think that the importance of us, like, and I want to be very clear: team building, Chris, does not mean that we all get brainwashed to think the same way. All right, we must reestablish an environment where you can have like principled, passionate debate and discussion with 180% differences of opinion and come right back to being able to get back to work the next day. But we have to be okay with that. We cannot be having grudges being held simply because we didn't support somebody on something at some point. We have way too much that we have to accomplish. 4 years, as much as that sounds like a lot of time, it is not a lot of time. We have a year that is going to be, kind of a get your feet wet for the new councillors, getting stuff happening. We've got a provincial election that's going to be happening in that, which is going to be a massive gap. That's going to take a year of productivity and pretty much flush it. And then probably 6 months after that, again, where you're like, well, now what are we going to do? So we have a lot that we want to do. We're really looking heavily in the county at, what we're going to be doing with municipally owned infrastructure. A lot of it's been managed by community associations and by ag service boards that I think is going to be up for discussion right now as to what that relationship looks like. We don't want to completely change it, but we want to make sure that the facilities are being funded. It's harder to find volunteers right now. It's harder to fundraise right now. So we don't want to, kill our ability to utilize some of the ag service boards to help access provincial budgets. But knowing that some of them are having a hard time finding volunteers, how do we make sure that the things that need to get done are being done? And we leave the program delivery to the service boards, but we make sure that they know that the county is going to step up and fix the buildings. So that's number one. And once the team building is there and we get our strategic plan in place, man, my passion for FCM, my passion for RMA. I would love nothing more. In the last 8 years, I was the only councillor from Cypress County to go to go to FCM. I would love to see our council attend. It's going to be in Edmonton this next year. It's nice and close. And, there's nothing like having the ability to meet other councillors from across this province or across the country, recognizing how little divides us. And to find out, how do they do it in other provinces? What does it look like? What is the collective voice of 98%, 95% of municipally elected officials? What does that collective voice have when it comes down to power, advocating for the needs? I think we've clearly established with the federal government that municipal is a third level of government. The province at times is maybe dragging their feet and wanting to recognize us as that. And sometimes I think that can be a little bit political. But the reality is we have 3 different types of government that are delivering 3 different types of service, but we have one taxpayer. We need to start treating that taxpayer as, a respected partner in how we do this. And municipalities can't be used as a leveraging tool between provincial and municipal bodies of government. And so after we team build, after we've gone through our orientation, after we've identified where we want to go, let's go out and get it. That to me is what our next 6 months looks like.
Mr. Kurpjuweit, you're starting to sound like our mutual friend, Scott Pierce, the former mayor of Gore now.
I will take it. I don't have the fluorescent shoes on or the floral shirt, but I will definitely take that compliment. Thank you.
So before we let you go, I should mention to everyone who's watching the links to the counselor candidate's Facebook page will be in the show notes and the Instagram. So that way, if you want to reach out and ask the question that we haven't chatted about, please do before you head to the polls on October 20th. And my final question for you, Robin, because we are recording this on Sunday, October 12th, which is Thanksgiving Sunday. So I want you to get back to your family before you're hitting the doors again this week. Why should people of Cypress County in your division put their trust into you for another 4 years in office?
I would say if you've liked what I've done in the last 8 years, we're still just getting rolling. I think that for those who have seen me fight, those who have seen what I do, I'm not your normal, conventional laid back counselor. I think I've probably put my energy and my passion on display a little bit, even in this. I do get fired up. I'm excited about the opportunities. Some of the restrictions are real, and I think that it's as important for the county and those who are looking at voting for me right now to also contact their neighbors and have conversation about what kind of council do we need to have in order to advance this, because I could have 100% vote support in my ward, and if we have 8 other councillors that are elected that don't reflect some of the things that I talk about. In fact, one of the things I've loved about this campaign is seeing other wards contacting me, other candidates contacting me, saying we really like what you're talking about, and I'm trying my best in doing more of these podcasts as well. I want to be contagious. I want the message to be contagious. I don't need credit for this, Chris. I just want these ideas to be picked up and run with by other councillors as well. I don't need the credit. I want to see the county do well, and that's what I'm going to be fighting for. I'm going to bring that energy forward. I'm going to keep on doing it. I'm going to keep on fighting to go to Edmonton. I'm going to keep on fighting to fight for rural Alberta at the federal level, working with our MPs and MLAs, and being ready to pick up the phone when I need to, and when people are looking to contact me at home. No problem. We can talk about grading and plowing and water co-ops and things like that. But with me, what you see is what you get.
Certainly is. Robin, best of luck in the last week of this campaign. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy weekend to sit down with me and chat about your campaign. And best of luck on October 20th as we head in. And we will probably see you at RMA and hopefully at FCM in Edmonton next year.
Well, thank you, Chris. And you know what? In the nature of Thanksgiving, I'm going to give you one of my thankfuls today. I'm thankful for you and for all of the work that you have done over the last few years for municipal government. I think that in a time where or just government in general is maybe lacking some transparency or the impression of transparency, you have helped to bring it to the people in a way that they can understand, and you've helped municipal councillors and leaders to engage with people on a completely different level. And so round of applause for you. I'm grateful for you, my friend. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you so much for tuning in for the penultimate episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. Now, we want to thank you so much for tuning in for another great episode, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are going live on election night, and you will not want to miss that upcoming live and election night special, where we will bring you in-depth analysis from across the province of Alberta. To stay in the loop with all of our other episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platforms or on YouTube. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with our final episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 shortly.